Hello and welcome, viewers. We are on Kohler Bowl Talks tonight, and I'd like to thank the Kohler team for setting up this wonderful platform where we are able to engage and debate on topics which are deserving much attention. We are live across multiple social media platforms right now. We're live on YouTube, Insta, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I'd like to let the audience know that we will be taking questions from our panelists at the end of our session. So please have them coming. My team at the end will filter them and we'll shortlist the appropriate questions and we will be then posing them to our panelists. So let's deep dive into the topic at hand today. It takes 10,000 hours, they say, to master your craft. Look at arts, music, architecture. They all have something of a rigor in them. But when we look at today's context of hyper speed, hyper reality, there's this instant gratification that the society is needing. And there is a sense that we're losing the appreciation of craft as an ideology, as an idea. World over, you look at materialism, it's on its highest, it's peaking. And what materialism has done is it has reduced quality and craftsmanship to a luxury, which becomes then the domain in the hands of the few and not for the all. So what happens to our craftsmen and our craft? We are losing their comprehension and their appreciation. Let's look at our context. Context is downloaded, unfiltered into the palms of our hands now. They are mitigated information, which at times is not giving us the complete perspective that we need to have. Context, if it has to be taken with discernment, we need to open up a dialogue about the missing connections that make architecture and design as a part of the whole. Our conversations are always limited to the tangibles, to the peripherals of design, but never about the connections that it needs to make with human, nature, and probably at a more spiritual level. Today, we want to discuss craft in architecture, in contextual architecture, and widen the scope of the missing connections that may exist and how we can find them. I must say, on a lighter note, I see the numbers are swelling up, and this is the first time that I'm happy to see numbers swelling up, not of my weight or of the COVID numbers, but it's because of the two wonderful panelists that we have. I'd like to introduce my first panelist, Sonali Rastogi. Sonali Rastogi is an internationally renowned architect and founding partner of Morphogenesis, which is listed amongst the top 100 architectural firms worldwide. She is an active member of various architectural organizations and committees and poses as an influential speaker for the profession. She has to her acclaim 110 national and international awards for a wide area of work. Working across a diverse canvas ranging from architecture to urban design, landscape and interior design, Sonali's professional portfolio includes several significant commercial buildings, residential complexes, hotels, offices, institutions. I'm running out of breath. Select residences across India, Bhutan, South Africa, Nepal, Bangladesh, UAE, Sri Lanka, and Afghanistan. Her design approach is inspired by the evolutionary process in nature. Morphogenesis, design philosophy, SOUL, is an acronym. Sustainability, optimization, unique and livable. That shapes all her work. A strong proponent of the arts and craft, Sonali is a founder member of Manthan, a platform for creative individuals to express their concepts and ideologies. She's also been actively engaged in spreading awareness on stories of the untold monuments and sites through the India Lost and Found platform. Welcome, Sonali.
Thank you. Thank you.
My second panelist is Viraj Patki. Viraj is the Chief Executive Officer of PG Patki Architects, who has upscaled the legacy of 50 years old firm with a contemporary inputs. A strong believer of form following function, versatility being her forte. She and her team consistently emphasize on maintaining a balance between aesthetics and functionality of each project, with emphasis on art and practical use of space. Her work encompasses various fields of design from large-scale urban projects to interior spaces. Some of the great hospitality work I've had the pleasure of going and visiting. So yes, it's absolutely wonderful. For Viraj, the vision of the client is of paramount importance, and she draws inspiration from the individual needs of each client while striving to create relevant designs that stand the test of time. She admires the work of Frank Lloyd Wright, an American architect and interior designer who is believed in designing structures that were harmony with humanity and environment, a philosophy he called organic architecture. I would like to play a small AV to highlight the works of both Sonali and Viraj. Welcome. So I think the AV might be having a glitch. So I apologize for the moment. And I'd like to take a deep dive straight into the questionnaire, if you allow me. Craft is a way of living, and its existence in our tradition and our heritage has always been omnipresent. Yet, if you look at it, it has a graph of an ECG. You know, it's always had a start and a short life. We often talk of it in the sense of it being resurrected again, you know, and we need to revive it. I just wanted to understand on a broader prospect before we get into craft and architecture, that why is that craft is always needing to be revived, and where did we lose it? Your thoughts on it, Sonali?
So I'd like to first understand the definition of craft. I'm always a little bit on the fence about exactly what are we talking about when we say craft, because craft is either the revered object. It's a beautiful porcelain object, or it's a beautiful carved object, or it's an amazing building jari, or a table, or an inlay, or is architecture craft itself, right? Because at one level, I think just working with material and having an end outcome is the process of craft, and thereby architecture itself is craft, right? So I think therefore at one level, we, of course, the lament is often heard, that revival of the craft. At the other level, architecture goes on. Okay, I mean, architecture is the largest dross of human activity visible on the planet. So architecture goes on, and architecture is craft, right? So then the question is it a certain type of craft that needs revival? Okay, or is it a certain community based activity which needs revival? So I, for my own personal definition, prefer to think of these as like the processes of craft, which is architecture, objects, architecture at the larger scale, objects on an intimate scale, and there are some parts of it which have dropped off. And to me, I'm talking about reviving those parts or reinterpreting or questioning whether they need a revival or is there a hope of revival of these certain parts. I don't think there is a death of craft at all.
So let me just expand that question a little bit. When I speak of craft, what happened is that there's the whole boom of industrialization that came about. And with industrialization, that what happened is there was mass production. And with mass production, what happened is there was a sort of a sense of the craftsman, and the idea of craftsmanship began to kind of get depleted and die out because they were not able to kind of match up to the production value that was required. And that's where one gets the sense that craft was then reduced to a luxury quotient, something of a skill set of a hand or a handmade. So I'm not yet going into the debate of craft in architecture, but more keeping it on a macro level of just craft, saying that why does it happen so often with craft that it is unable to sustain itself on its own steam? Viraj, any thoughts?
So, if we say skillfully building anything is craft, then like Sonali is saying, architecture is also craft. So I think what you're trying to talk about is traditional Indian craft or traditional craft. Our buildings, traditionally Indian buildings, I think have always been a piece of craft, right? I mean, you look at they were pieces of craft that were built with relevance. So if you look at your circular bhungas of Kutch, that were built circular so they could withstand the sandstorms. Or think about the Chettinad Havelis, built with their courtyards and their verandas. They all served a purpose. So I think a craft, so the relevance and the use and the purpose of a craft is very, very important when we talk about craft in this context. Fortunately I work with a lot of craftsmen given the kind of work we do. Whether it is a carpet or whether it's the inlay of Petrodura floor or whether it is blown Italian glass, craft is always part of our project. So I'm not sure whether revival is the word I would use for craft in architecture. Really, I think it is more that we learn from where we were, we grow the craft, keep it relevant. Now, whether it is handmade or machine made or factory made, I don't know. I don't think that diminishes the value of the craft. Our needs have changed. Our buildings have become more complex. Obviously, our craft needed to evolve with it.
So let me then get into specificity from where I'm coming to ask you that, when you look at craft, and there's this famous saying by Renzo Piano. He says that, craftsmanship is about work of someone that you cannot separate it, the work of a mind from the work of a hand. And unfortunately, many of us have come to accept that as these are two independent entities. You see craft as either an engineering or a design tool, but you see it minus that of a craftsmanship. But they don't seem to have a conjoined kind of a Siamese twins at the hip. They don't exist in reality. Now look at, for example, the modern day age tools, the new ordinances of crafts, so to speak. We talk of digital media, we talk of AI, we talk of 3D printing. Is that the new ordinances in craft? Would that also be put under the same umbrella of craftsmanship and skill as we did for the traditional ones, which were all by the hand, so to speak? Sonali?
So one of the other things that Renzo Piano said was one of the great beauties of architecture is that each time it is like starting life all over again. Okay, for each project. Right? So I'm not a believer in the fact that craft needs to be captured in exactly that format and kind of frozen in time and stay that way. Because I think craft is a lot more than a mind and hand connect. I think it is mind and environmental connect. It is mind and resource understanding connect. I think it is a lot of wisdom. Okay, so somebody who understands sort of the like say like we talked about Bhungas, Viraj. I'll talk about Kansaras of Gujarat. They understand how to curve the bowl to give it that phenomenal vessel shape. Okay, now I have 25-year-olds coming to work who want to say, Sonali, I want to do parametric architecture. It's so exciting. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, it's exactly the same. The Kansara vessel molding is a parametric exercise. It is the understanding of complex geometry. Okay, so I find it slightly reductionist if I say that the only way for that craft is that he should sit and beat it with hand for the rest of his life, and then I should pay a price for the amount of time he is beaten that bowl for. Whereas actually understanding where the beauty lies in the end form and the wisdom. If today's time and today's tools connect that wisdom and the end form in another way, then I think it is true continuation of craft.
Fair enough. But one of the things that has always concerned me as an architect and as a designer is that when we talk of craft in architecture, it's more or less reduced, as you rightly use the word, as a reduction, to the idea of being inspired by craft. It then boils down to craft being more like in the foreground, but does not become the backbone of design or the backbone of architecture. And if craft has to become like the soul of design, somewhere it needs to transcend that boundary. How does one make sure that craft is not looked at as a simple exercise of veneering, and it's more looked at as a thought-provoking, as you rightly said, or a determining value towards the design process, Viraj?
So I think if the craft is relevant, it will become the backbone, and that's why the craft needs to be evolved. So yes, you'll have inspiration from traditional craft, but you'll have married ways of making it today. And why not employ those when you have the option? You can do it faster, you can do it more cost effectively. Yes, when the medium of mode of construction and the material changes, yes, you get a different product. But I don't think that diminishes the craft. So domes, for example. Okay, domes were part of traditional architecture simply because that was one way of sort of spanning large spaces, right? Today you have a million ways of spanning large spaces. You can build all sorts of slabs and do that. A couple of years ago, when we were building the Intercon on Marine Drive, it sits in the Heritage Precinct. And Art Deco elements were essential to that project. And we thought, why not build the dome? And the dome over there, obviously, we didn't go back to using traditional modes of constructing it. You didn't do corbelling and plastering. You went ahead, you had someone design segmented GRC panels, and you had it erected, and there's a beautiful dome over there. It's not diminishing the dome as a craft. So I think if we keep it relevant and we sort of evolve it, I think, yes, I think that should serve the purpose.
Sonali, I want to draw you into this conversation because I remember, off the topic when we were doing our conversations, you mentioned about using the terracotta pots in one of your projects, right? And you spoke about the fact that how it's brought down the insulation in the building, and it was a mode of construction, and it stemmed from a simple idea of craft, which became then an engineering tool, and it then became what I would say the complete design. So how does one go about this?
So I'm a strong believer in context, and of course context itself in our Indian environment definitely carries with it if you track back into history, or you will always carry some level of local workmanship in that region. I strongly believe that all crafts and all architecture, which we today call vernacular or regional, and may not be vernacular, the poor man's hut, but also the palace, all of it came out of a need to be sustainable, because the tools to fly things from around the world were not there. Was always built of local materials. You built with sandstone in Rajasthan, and you built with marble where marble was, and you built with Kota stone where that was, because of resource limitation. And so they made the best of what they could, you know. And so I think it's not. So we get too much of a romantic picture, thinking only the hand sculpted statue in front of the building is called craft, because we think only something that proclaims its grandeur is craft. Okay, but craft was involved in every part of building making. So traditionally in Rajasthan, which is one of the hottest places in the world, for insulation they would use inverted earthen pots, and simple, humble inverted pots. You know, not ones which are even glazed. You know, sun-baked inverted pots, just those that are sufficient to retain the shape. And they captured air, and as we all know, air is a good insulator. And then we put a second roof. Now this has been done from times immemorial. Okay, so working in Rajasthan, I would get one pot which was about that big in size, so 1 square foot. Okay, for 1 rupee 25 paise. Okay, where insulation was for 50 rupees. So here now, I think I would be more proud of that use of craft, where all our roofs, all our open corridors are in our educational buildings are all done like that in all of North India, because educational buildings have the tightest budgets, and now it's just a matter of convincing clients. Now, I see no reason. My own house, I've done that, so I see no reason why it can't be done for every type of building. Okay, now tomorrow, yes. Now what may happen is I may not get the potter on the wheel making it. It may be faster to produce the pot on some mechanical gadget. Already the wheels are not only done by the wooden stick. It already has a machine.
That's right.
Right. So that craft has evolved already. Right. So craft has to keep pace. Designers have to keep pace with the wisdom of the craft, not just the grandeur of the craft. Okay.
Well said. Yeah.
The fact is that I had 5 families spinning these pots for months, and that gave local employment. I cannot say that these crafts were marvelous. They were functional crafts, right? So and this for me can be done in India forever, because the sun is going to be there forever. The climate is going to be there, somewhat worse maybe, but it's going to be the same forever. So therefore, this solution, which has worked for 1,000 years, maybe more, is going to continue working.
So let me lean into sorry, Viraj.
If you have an image, it would be nice if at some point when your AV comes, that image could come, because that image always captivates people.
So I believe the AV did play out, from what I understand, but it was played out for the audience and the viewers, and not for us.
Okay.
So that's what happened. Yeah.
So while Sonali was talking about earthen pot insulation, it's something, like she's very rightly saying, something done in India for forever. It's the mode of insulation that was known traditionally, vernacularly, whatever you say. In fact, when we did the Rajvilas, we adopted the same form of insulation. But so this is where I actually talk about relevance. Sonali, you think we can do this on our skyscrapers? You think I'll get all the certification that I require? You think some PMC is going to sign it off? So as long as I'm just wondering whether everything that was done traditionally will still be, I mean, which PMC is going to give me my 10-year warranties, guarantees when I'm not doing the sheet waterproofing, when I'm building PT slabs, I'm not building trough slabs to do the. So I think, yes, we need to, this is a craft, like you're saying, but I don't think it could be relevant for all projects today.
So I think like I quoted Renzo Piano, you have to reinvent with every project.
Sure.
Okay, so there will be those with more and more globalization. There will be those which will be aspiring for a global imagery. Okay, and it will be hard to sell certain ideas. But on the other hand, I find that being sustainable, with simply because at the least what it does is save money. At the least, forget about everything else that it does. A lot of things can be done in the garb of being sustainable. Okay, for example, I get away with a lot of second skins in which are quite relevant in our south and west orientation in our country.
The
And
Brisoleils.
yeah, and then that for me, I take the reference not from Brisoles but from actually Jali.
Jalis, yes.
Yeah, and the fact that the Jali may or may not have my traditional lotus motif is actually irrelevant. Okay,
Completely.
and here again I'm talking of wisdom of craft. Okay, I can do the Zydus building that you, Shobhan said that you visited. Now that is a rain screen. The doubly curving surface is actually a rain screen, and water goes in and goes out, and all of those
Correct.
surfaces out of it. Okay, it's not a jolly, but they are there are areas in this country where they would allow the water to go into the cavity of the wall and come out from the bottom because they didn't know
Yes.
how to stop the water from going into the building. So it's best to let it go in and come out. Okay.
Yeah.
So that idea emerged out of that. Okay. So I think sometimes you can use the wisdom of craft. Sometimes you can actually use the craft. Sometimes you can reinvent the craft. Sometimes you can engage the craft community. So there is no one solution that fits all situations.
I think that's a very important point.
So moving forward, would we come to a consensus and say that, there was a time where we used to look at crafts and we used to learn from crafts. Then there was all of a sudden, this whole image that we had of star architects, and craft and craftsmanship became a tool to for them. But today, are we saying that today there is a stronger sense that we need to form an alliance, a co-collaboration, a co-authorship with craftsmanship and kind of make them the protagonist and build on a storyboard which supports both our intents and they're seamlessly rather than just being, coming in as a footnote somewhere in design. Viraj, if you want to.
So yes, in all the ornate hotels, the authentic, your Raj Vilas, Amar Vilas, I do believe the craftsmen were the protagonists. I mean, with, all the beautifully carved columns and jalis, I mean, they're the ones who brought out the beauty of that building. But Shobhan, I also think we probably need to redefine the craftsman today. So there are a lot of people who today collaborate to make our complex buildings. And I think, why would I not call my structural engineer a craftsman? Why would I not call my interior architect my craftsman? Why will I not call my landscape architect? I mean, graphics, lighting, everyone. So I think collaboration in today's day and age with the complexities of our building and the kind of things we are trying to do, I think is inevitable. I mean, without actually trying to say, who has put in how much in a building is very relative. But yes, I mean, there are buildings where I feel someone else has taken the spotlight. I mean, if you look at the Osho pyramid that we've built, okay, it is a 25,000 square feet columnless space rising from the ground about 80-90 feet. I mean, I truly think the structural engineer was the star in that project. It's a beautiful building. I mean, we're very, very proud of it. But really, it was because of him that we could build it. So yes, I think depending on the kind of project, we are always happy to let someone else be the protagonist. I don't think we shy away from that. Just let's redefine the craftsman. And so then,
sure.
I think where the problem lies is in a very narrow definition of the protagonist. Because I think there is they get relegated to being kind of a rescue project because we inherently insist on considering crafts traditional craft as almost like a morality issue. Like we need to be saviors, and it comes with this inherited morality. And those who can save it and copy it and make even two craftsmen and go at it are kind of these NGO brigade people doing the good for craft. Whereas I actually think that anything that is treated as a charitable cause will die a death. Okay, so it's extremely important, not just because I want to save a dying race. No, I think for me the wisdom and the craft of building well and building sustainably, building in an optimized way, and to date, what the Western world calls bespoke, but really is unique. Okay, and to make the architecture livable. That's it. So that's why, for me, it's extremely important to look at the history, therefore craft, and absorb from the science of it, like our insulation strategy is the science of it, to, for example, what we have a project, which is ITC Kolkata, and if the audio visual is playing, then they can show that right now. The project was just somehow, it's a campus of 28 acres and with a very high density of buildings. And we used the storytelling narrative of Bengali conversations, because we said Bengalis talk a lot. I can say that because I'm half Bengali. They talk a lot. They discuss art. They discuss craft. It is still a thriving kind of conversation, even in the common man. So we wanted to bring all the outdoor space to be involved with that. Now, at a local level, we could do outdoor public galleries and things like that. But at a building level, it's something which is going to be ITSEZ. What do we bring in? So we brought in the thoughts of the local artists and craftsmen. And there was a workshop head. There were themes about seasons and Bengal that were shared. There were stories of Tagore that were shared. And based on that, they came up with hundreds of artworks. Okay, now we looked at them, we looked at what would lend itself at the PMC price point to get CNC cut, what would lend itself to lighting, to being lit well, what would form a coherent part of the narrative. Okay, now, and that is up. It's under construction. If the images are there, you'll see it's going up. These are all 14-floor high murals. I mean, there'll be 28 of them. It's going to be one of the largest art installations probably anywhere in the world. I really don't know the statistic exactly, but my guess is it will be. Okay.
Lovely.
And so the fact that there was involvement of local artists, artists came down even from Shanti Niketan, young students came down and did this, right? So for me, they knew how to work with the ideology of the region. So a regional story, a regional narrative, regional artists, modern technology, global price point, all of those stories had to tie together. So it became a story. Even the production of it became a story, which I find inspiring. Okay, so, and I do have my small crafts and whatever sitting in the parks in there and all of that. Okay, but to me, this larger story is more exciting because this has actually given a way forward.
So I'm glad the way you put it. You brought regionalism, and as well as that in the same sentence you brought in globalization. And these are the two words that as architects we always have to straddle. Are you looking at critical regionalism? Is your designs global? These are the two demands that we are always having to deal with. Do you think that the tectonics of design and the craft and architecture can cater to this contextual reality of having to kind of look at both these facets in design, Viraj?
I think we need to embrace both global and regional. I think we need to embrace the best practices from both. But like architecture sort of shapes lives, society, we can't, I can't pick up something from the West and build it over here and think it's going to work. I mean, you will have to alter it. It will have to cater to who and where it is built for. If you look at any residential building, I mean, if you pick up 3 cities, Ahmedabad, Pune, Hyderabad, maybe exteriorly, all the 3 buildings are going to look similar. Okay, and today, I think everything's built with a certain aspirational value. So I think, yes, everything's going to look similar, but you're going to plan them very, very differently. So in Hyderabad, you're going to plan them based on Vastu. In Pune, you're going to do large balconies. In Ahmedabad, you're just going to do larger spaces. So I don't think I can sort of compartmentalize what aspect of global and regional I'm going to pick up, but I think they both need to be married in your designs. I mean, even a glass box building. I mean, when we did Godrej 2, it's a stunning glass box building. It's sitting across the mangroves in Mumbai. The sun in Mumbai is very, very strong. And because at any given point, we wanted to have clear visions out to the mangrove, we built beautiful 1.2 meter aluminum canopies, like fins to the building, that sort of casts a shadow on the glass. And
also the terraces, the breakout terraces.
Correct. And so this building could have been anywhere, but obviously you had to, and then you reacted to a site, and then you reacted to a region. So you need to do that, I think, with any architecture. I think then you'll have a fairly decent product.
So I'm going to digress. Sorry, so please, Sonali.
I want to add to that, I like this statement very much, which I've used since I was a student at the A, which is that architecture is the dross of human activity. Okay, so it cannot be disconnected from the humans that it is being built for. And look at us in this conversation. Are you the Maharashtrian who only knows Maharashtra? Are you a global citizen? Am I only just defined by the state I come from? And is that who I am? Or am I a global Indian today? Okay, so you cannot build anachronistic projects where people are in a different time frame and projects are in a different time frame. So I am not at all in the mode of that one should only build Indian or one should only build global, and I'm not in the mode of being able to bracket into isms clearly, because I think the day with the 80s and 90s and with a large part of the world becoming part of the same global language, in terms of people, we are as Indian as it can be, and we are also very global at the same time. Our sources of information, our education, our interactions, our professions. Okay, like the number of professions that grew in this country since liberalization is amazing. Otherwise, we were talking before this conversation started as the choices we had of science or arts or commerce or 4 professions. Now it's a limitless world, and we've learned from the pandemic that it's also a locationless world. Now we work digitally anywhere and everywhere. So I think this whole debate where regionalism versus globalism, for me, it's no versus. The humans are regional and global. The buildings are regional and global.
So continuing the same thread of conversation, because we have a lovely question come up. This is a question on Instagram from Cradle Maker. How are global clients open to Indian arts and craft in their work? And the only reason why I bring it up is because we're talking about globalization. We're talking about contextuality of building it in our particular region. Both your practices are in that sense global, and they're working all over the world. How do you see that amongst your clients? How are they reacting to this? Sonali, you could go first and then followed by Viraj.
I have an equal number of, say, homegrown Indian companies on my portfolio, as I have international clients, especially corporates, or if they are not international, they are backed by international money and funding. So they come, quite often they come in with, to get the sustainability angle is no difficulty at all. Yeah. So now we are talking of, I mean, that wasn't the case 20 years ago, but now it's not difficult. Okay, what is What is difficult is that they come in with a preset global image that this is what we want to build. Okay. And because of the way you actually have client representatives who are your client, there is no real client. There isn't a owner of the project. It's always a group of people who are client reps, and there is no real client. Right. So client reps come with their own preconditioning as what is expected for them to deliver. Okay, so there the conversation becomes harder, and this is what Viraj and I were talking about last time informally.
So, but do you feel that this agitated,
but you can include in limited ways.
I was just going to say so depending on where you're building, I think you will see silhouettes of craft. Okay, yeah. But everyone wants something that's international. That could be found anywhere else. That's matching the base standards of that. Yeah. And unfortunately, not everyone comes in with the knowledge of craft. So when you talk about India, you'll talk about a carved wooden column, you'll talk about a jali, and that's where it will end.
Yeah.
But
Viraj, how difficult is it?
No, in the form of art.
You're doing so many hospitality projects, right? And most of them are corporates who are international. They're international chains at the end of the day. And like Sonali was saying, that it's convincing the client at that point in time that, they need to make a deep dive into the idea of craft and architecture and not just look at it as a beg, borrow, steal of a region. You've done so many in historical places. How do you kind of engage at that point in time?
So really, I mean, some of our flagship projects like your Rajvilas, I mean, or even Hyatt Regency Kathmandu. I mean, really, Bhaktapur at that time it was studied, proportions, architecture, pagodas, everything. And then you amalgamated modern construction, brought in local artists, and then you built a building that's so authentic. Similarly, in a similar modem was followed in Rajvilas, but so in hospitality, actually, to incorporate craft is far easier. Is far easier.
Also, number one, the word hospitality and bespoke, kind of the more bespoke you get, the better your hospitality project gets. And secondly, people in India are looking to come for, when people come
an experience.
I'm building an international hotel in Bangalore. Okay, but obviously, it's in the business district. It isn't, based on traditional crafts and things like that. But there still needs to be a flavor of. So as simple as, so we took the Rangoli design, we sort of fragmented, disintegrated it, and created them as area rugs in the hotel rooms. So you're going to modernize the art, but everyone wants to see some amount of art. So hospitality is the easy bit to involve craftsmen.
Yeah. I would agree.
It is your corporate clients where.
Okay, so there was this one question that's come on Facebook from Pranjal Saxena. What is the physical relationship between craft and architecture? I think we've covered that, but I just thought that if you want to add anything in particular, but what is the physical relationship between craft and architecture?
I think physical is very obvious. We need to look at the non-obvious relations between craft and architecture. And I think we need to start thinking about architecture as pieces of craft.
So, I just wanted to kind of extend the topic a little bit. I think when we spoke also that, we're speaking of craft and context in architecture, but for me as a student from the industry, I find that there are certain missing connections. And when I speak of missing connections, these could be policy making paralysis that we see, or the pedagogy, or the schooling, the way they're teaching us. Do you sense that to kind of make sure that the future of architecture is well imbibed in craft and is extremely contextual, there needs to be certain changes for these connections to become strengthened, and these links, which are missing links, are there, that they should be removed? Sonali?
I actually, well, I went to college so long back, I've forgotten college, but I actually don't. I can lament about many things that could be taught at college, but one of the things they do teach, first year, second year, is a lot about going into a village cluster, going into something, measure drawings, history. So I don't think there is a lack of introduction to these topics. I think where I find that a lot of practices fail, or there is a danger of practices failing, is they forget the idiom of relooking from a completely new perspective each time they think a project.
Or the intent. Would you call it the intent?
No, I think it's just convenient. It's probably more convenient. It probably has overwork, pressure, financial dynamics. A lot of these things probably involve time constraints, resource constraints of various sorts. But I think the fact that one needs to imbibe wisdom from the past, I don't think there is any lack of introduction of that concept. I think what happens is that every project should be thought through those processes, should be conceptualized from ground zero per se. The environment where you're going to build needs to be studied thoroughly. It's history gone into it. What they were doing at what time with what technology needs to be understood. Okay, so I think people don't often, I'm not saying all the time, some of the people, some of the time, slip into a routine in practice, and I think that is what leads to non-original thinking, and non-original thinking leads to a non-inclusive approach. You only keep on doing what you know how to do.
Sure. Viraj?
I also think that architecture is learned through exposure, through experimenting, and I think our pedagogy, like you said, lacks that. I mean, architecture is the mother of all art. And what is our exposure? We move from subject to subject, class to class. How much of other forms of art do we sort of imbibe in our education? How much does our education tell us? I mean, I'd love architecture to be a system of learn by doing, right? How many of us have actually built a wall or laid a floor or cured concrete while we were in architecture school? So I think the exposure at that level also needs to change. And I think they also somewhere need to, there is a big disconnect in what you do in architecture school and what you come out and do as a professional. And someone needs to bridge that gap. Someone needs to prepare the student for what day-to-day architecture is all about. And I think
I tend to differ with that slightly. I think 5 years is too. 5 years is the. I think, in my opinion, has to all be about helping you develop an ability to scrutinize and think the situation through. Okay, whether it is thinking through communities, thinking through materials, thinking through science, thinking through environment. And I'll share with you, like I studied a lot. Somehow I just studied a lot. Okay, so I did a bachelor's and a master's and another master's, and I did my both my master's at the Architectural Association. Now at the A, really it still follows the Guru Shishya system, and you work on your individual projects. You don't. The whole class doesn't work on the same project. In fact, I was the first batch of the now much coveted DRL. And I think what the A gave me, and I'm very grateful for my education at the SPA Delhi. I'm extremely grateful for my education at the AA. I think it was life transforming because I think we didn't discuss buildings at all, ever. You know, we were only always discussing ideology, ways of thinking, ways of looking, ways of being. Okay, and I think that has helped me. If you were to ask me my one personal strength, my one mantra is that the way of thinking about design is what I gained. So whether I choose to think about crafts, whether I choose to think about technology, whether I choose to think about what next and how to use a digital medium, it's the way of thinking. And if that is kept alive, then you could be inclusive of an endless number of things in the lifetime of an architect. Because as Viraj said, it's a mother of all arts. You can include anything at any point of your life into your own sort of your entire gamut of information system that informs you about your creations.
But are we getting that sort of opportunity as students? So it's, I mean, that's where I'm coming from. So unfortunately, I'm not sure. So this is all very, very the romanticism of architecture, learning architecture. I don't know whether it exists. I wish it were like this. I wish we all had mentors that we could chat with, ideate with, and learn how to think architecture as opposed to do architecture.
So
Yes.
let me kind of end the session now, guys. It has been wonderful, but I think there's this growing plea in architecture for a different kind. One that adheres to connections with context, one where the materials are suitably used, sensitively used, where high quality is a norm, it's a standard, it's not an anomaly. We are hoping that we have this continued dialogue with craft as an intent, with thoroughness, the idea of it being skillful. I think moving forward, craft and contextual architecture is something that we all need to be encouraging and responsibly doing as we move ahead. I would like to thank both my panelists, Viraj, Sonali. Thank you so much. The hour has gone by. I think we can connect after this on wine. This has been wonderful chatting with you. I thank my viewers for tuning in. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Viraj. Nice talking to you. Hope we get to fly and see you in Mumbai soon.
Looking forward to it.
Soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.